Hey Christo, I got a couple things for you to try to do because you're missing one especially key move in the downswing, and I think it's related to this balance here. So we look at Hogan, and when he starts back, you can see that he pulls the right hip back, and the left is sort of staying there. And I kind of described this in one of my articles, but basically the left side is almost like the axis point of the hip, and basically the right hip pulls back instead of the left going forward. And where a lot of people get in trouble is they go forward on the left more than they pull the right hip back. And so you can kind of see your balance. Your hip is now in front of this line here, and then this tends to put the weight too much on the toes, so your head gets a little bit lower and more toward the ball. And then you got a position where you can't get out of it. So you're left with this move, which is really the key to it all. You're actually got a bunch of this, we call this the goat hump, and it's just slightly off, but it's because there's a missing move. So let me show you what that move is. So when you're coming down, let's use Hogan from right here, and you're going to be in a similar, oops. Okay, so we're just going to approximate where this, basically where the tailbone is. Okay, now when Hogan goes from here to here impact, if we just kind of take that angle of his tailbone, it looks like it's moved to the right or toward the ball. To the right meaning toward the ball this way. Uh, and then of course his hips look relatively level, meaning there's not too much of a tilting here. And what that's doing is keeping the right hip sort of up while the right shoulder is definitely bent lower. So this is our lateral bend here. So this gap has closed, and then his spine is bent like a C right here. Okay, now what you're gonna do instead is there's barely any movement to the ball. It's almost like staying in what would be called staying in the posture, if you want to call it that. But the real thing that's occurring is there's a right hip movement that's towards the ball, that should be toward the ball, and then that will create more rotation at impact. So for me at least, your if I look at what your spine looks like, it's that's a bad drawing here. It's less rotated and less curved. So we don't have as much rotation here as Hogan, and then we don't have the curvature of the spine. So basically, going through impact, right? See that little? It's a thrust move, which is saying the pelvis is going this way. The right hip going too much toward the right at this point, as opposed to if it went more to the right at this movement before impact, then when the thrust occurs, the thrust actually creates body rotation. So that gets the right hip going straight toward target out here. So so there's the rightward movement before impact. The thrust creates rotation that sends the right hip toward the target as opposed to toward the ball at after impact. Right. So post impact, you're going way more toward the ball, jumping up a bit. And you can see that even in the base of your neck here has more of a jump appearance. and then you can't rotate as well. I mean, basically the rotation is coming from this movement of the tailbone that's kind of going toward the ball before impact again, and thrusting creates more rotation going through, and then that's how Hogan gets this little blur right here as a club, but that's how you get the club exiting so low, because if you can't rotate, the club has to go up because your arm has to go up. And also, small little difference here is when you see this wrist position, I would say he's much more in ulnar deviation at that point, meaning the thumbs are pointed down, and he's actually holding more, um, because your body can't rotate as easily. You've got more of a fold in the left arm and more of a radial deviation in the wrist. So that's where it's so different, especially here too, right? Because again, this is all a function of pure body rotation or spine rotation, and then he can get to those kind of positions very easily. Let's go look at the front view. Okay, more things here. Notice the tension in your arms, and I think this can be attributed to what you're maybe going to be thinking of and feeling going back. You see, Hogan is so much softer in his right arm. This is very tense, very wide. Um, Again, people overdo this wide idea, and it's really not a great thing. So it should be softer, and I'll show you a couple more places you can improve. Okay, so at the top of the backswing, I think you actually might be tilting down. Again, this is covered up by the shadow, but if we look at this just above your pocket here, which might be close to where your belt is, you actually drop down in the ending of the backswing, and you kind of see Hogan staying a bit more level with his hips. It's really good to have this contrast in the khaki versus the white shirt. But he stays taller in the left hip, or more level, because we don't want this tilt of your left hip in the backswing. This should start your downswing, but not necessarily uh, be there in the backswing. So uh, that would be another issue there. Okay, so then what gets to be really the key is here, when you get to this point right there. Okay, this might be a difference of a few degrees, but your right arm is already in internal rotation. So this right shoulder is has fired already, and Hogan has this slightly bent back in external rotation. So he's holding his external rotation longer than you are. And then it goes and starts to fire right about there. Okay, so now you get the internal rotation right at impact. That adds speed to the swing. And so for a lot of people, they're trying to muscle it when these guys are actually using the fastest moving joint in the body, which is the right shoulder internal rotation. That's the fastest moving joint in the body, and they're using it at the very end to create speed, and they can do it very effortlessly. It's not super, muscly. Okay, now the other thing is, if you look at left arm position, and this is partly a function of that internal rotation of the left shoulder. Okay, so it's bent and internally rotated. In other words, the elbow seems to point out toward the target. Yours is very straight and externally rotating right here. Okay, so part of this whole drive hold idea is keeping that elbow pointed out toward the target. So you can kind of see the little difference here between Hogan's elbow and yours. We're looking at the underside of your elbow here. So the release is different, okay, because he's using supination, holding internal rotation, and then he can let it go after impact. So there's a small little ER after impact. Yours is rotated someplace before impact. So that's external rotation of the left shoulder. And again, we can see that little more of a jumpy move here of you from this side versus Hogan is so much more rotational looking. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, and again, if you had better video camera, meaning a high speed camera, it would help because you're looking for little things. You got a good swing already. You're looking for little things that might be the differences, right? I mean, because I found over what 120 or so micro moves, and then they've got uh, maybe another 200 what I call anti moves, and so the better the resolution, the better the frame rate, the more little things you can see that makes you actually better rather than look good, because you look good already. Yeah, now you got to get it to be where everything's great.